You're listening to Stories from the Presbyterian Pew. This podcast is a resource of Advocacy from the Presbyterian Pew, a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to educating lay people in the PCA, the Presbyterian Church in America, about PCA church government and process. On our website, we offer free, self-paced courses to help you understand the Book of Church Order, the BCO. These courses cover how the BCO works in theory, but what does it actually look like in practice? Stories from the Presbyterian Pew gives you an opportunity to hear directly from those who have walked through or observed what happens when the wheels of church process are set in motion. The stories we share are all true and all happened in PCA churches. All names and place names have been changed to protect the identities of the storytellers and others who play a role in their stories. Our goal is to facilitate understanding and awareness. Think of these stories as case studies, embodied and brought alive by the voices of our storytellers. Welcome back to the second season of Stories from the Presbyterian Pew. At the beginning of the first season, we opened with an episode that was a bit of an apologetic for this podcast. Why are we doing what we're doing? If you're interested in our goals and our purposes, I recommend that episode as a helpful framework. Today, in launching the second season of the podcast, I'd like to talk a bit about the messiness of navigating resources and personalities, deciding who you can trust, and what resources are safe in tackling issues of abuse in the church. I'm expanding on ideas I previously wrote in an article, which I will link to in the show notes in case you want to reference it later or share it with others. But before we dive into this content, I want to share about a few new developments since the last time we published a podcast episode. First of all, you may or may not know that back in February, we opened a Facebook group to read and discuss the PCA's DASA report, Domestic Abuse and Sexual Assault Report. This report was adopted by the General Assembly in 2022, and during the course of this Facebook group discussion, we had the privilege to hold live Zoom conversations with authors of the DASA report, as well as some other subject area experts. The group discussion is now finished, but we've collected all of those recordings in one place, a free course on our website called Presbyterian Church Abuse Response 101. You can easily find it by going to presbyterianpew.org/courses, or you can find the direct link in the show notes. All you need to do to get access is to register for a free account on our site. Secondly, as the work we do to support lay people in the PCA has really ramped up as of late, we are in need of some more volunteer support. There are many different ways that volunteer skills can benefit our work, from behind-the-scenes, more technical tasks to public-facing communication. If you have any interest in helping, or maybe just learning more about what that might look like, please visit presbyterianpew.org/volunteer, or you can find the link in the show notes. And finally, just a reminder that we are always collecting names of folks, especially women, who would be willing to act as what we're calling a presbytery companion, a friend to attend a presbytery meeting with a victim, especially a woman, whose case is being discussed. If you'd like to learn more about that, you can find the details at presbyterianpew.org/companion, and the link is also in the show notes. If you have previously submitted an application, you can expect to hear from us soon about the next steps. And now on to the topic that I promised you we'd address today. Over a year ago, I wrote an article titled, "Why I Refuse to Pick Good Guys and Bad Guys in the PCA." It was a culmination of experiences where someone I expected to be one way based on their views on certain issues turned out to be different than I expected. Anyone who has worked in the area of abuse education or advocacy for any length of time has had the experience of finding that someone who seemed to be a champion of women and victims of abuse was actually himself an abuser. For example, many people have been helped by the book, Why Does He Do That?, written by Lundy Bancroft, a man with decades of experience working with abusive husbands. This book well describes the mindset and the motivations of an abuser. Recently, however, Accusations against Bancroft have surfaced, suggesting that he misused his position and took advantage of women who came to seminars he offered. Does that mean that everything he wrote is wrong? Can we still use his book or recommend it? Closer to home, right here in the PCA, many of us were thankful for the work of Liam Gallagher, then senior pastor of 10th Presbyterian Church in Philadelphia, in combating the false doctrine of the eternal subordination of the Son, ESS, a heretical understanding of the Trinity that is sometimes employed to defend a certain view of female submission and male authority. As you can imagine, it was extremely disorienting to discover that he was accused of and later confessed to clergy sexual abuse of a woman in his congregation. Truly, anytime you find abuse or misuse of authority where you expected to find godliness, protection, and gentle shepherding, it is confusing and disorienting. And it is very tempting to enact a category switch. Oh, I thought those guys were the good guys, but it turns out they aren't. Now I have to find a new category of people to be the good guys. We feel shaken when we discover a gaping hole in the basket where we kept all our eggs. And so it's understandable that we immediately go in search of a new, safer basket. The problem is that people are messy. I once heard a pastor say that people are, quote, a bundle of inconsistencies. My husband and I have repeated that insight to each other many times over the years. We aren't all matched sets of corresponding ideas and behaviors. For example, I'm a homeschool mom of 8 kids. Over the years, people have assumed that this must be accompanied by certain views on everything from vaccinations to sourdough bread, from denim skirts to political opinions. And sometimes I fit the stereotype people expect. Sometimes I don't. And perhaps there are even views or practices that I hold that are actually inconsistent with each other at some level without me even realizing it. This is part of the struggle of being human and being a work in progress for the entire time we move through life on this earth. In this season of Stories from the Presbyterian Pew podcast, we'll encounter people and ideas that might seem contradictory. Someone was helped by a person others have found difficult or even harmful. Someone benefited by reading a book written by an author who others have found problematic. Someone was dismayed by an overemphasis on a subject that we often see as harmfully ignored and dismissed. When we hear stories of abuse and harm, our brains long for clear categories. We want to know for sure who are the good guys and the bad guys in each story. But unfortunately, life doesn't always fall out in such simple categories. Good guys with good intentions can cause harm in their ignorance or inexperience. I've said it before, and I'm going to keep saying it, that it only takes a small amount of ignorance combined with a small amount of arrogance to create a large amount of damage. And bad guys with selfish motives can provide protection because it was beneficial to them to do so, even if we don't realize it at the time. We are in trouble if we expect the wolves to always look and act like wolves. And the same is true if we explicitly trust the shepherds to always know what to do, when to do it, and how to do it. I know this is unsettling and unsatisfying. Shouldn't there be a safe place? Shouldn't there be trustworthy people? One of the best responses I've heard in addressing this inherent tension was during an interview on The Russell Moore Show with guest Diane Langberg, who is a practicing psychologist, a member of the PCA, and also a DASA committee author. So we'll end our episode today with a clip from that podcast.
There are some people who would say, well, how do we have a church or have a ministry if we don't have trust? So if we're always kind of hyper vigilant of sort of evaluating these things, can we ever get to the point of being the kind of household of God, the kind of family that the New Testament calls us to be? How do you balance that sort of watching and keeping vigilant with trust?
First of all, I mean, obviously, you're talking to somebody who's in a particular position. I'm vigilant. There's nothing anybody can do about it after all these years. However, that kind of place, a church that's safe and you don't have to keep watching, is called heaven.
Mm.
It's not here. The church, so to speak, killed Jesus,
Mm-hmm.
and he was perfect. So it doesn't happen, and we don't want that to be true. We
Mm-hmm.
want ours to be different. We want to feel like it's safe all the time. We're meant for safety. It's not here. The safety we have is in him, not in a place or an organization or even another human. I think that's very hard for us to accept because we were made for safety.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. Stories from the Presbyterian Pew is a resource of Advocacy from the Presbyterian Pew, a 501c3 nonprofit. We are 100% volunteer run and 100% donor supported. We want to keep this podcast ad-free, but in order to do that, we need the financial support of listeners like you. To make a one-time or recurring contribution, please visit presbyterianpew.org/donate. If you are interested in learning more about the governing document of the PCA, the Book of Church Order, please check out our free self-paced courses at presbyterianpew.org/courses. And if you have a question about PCA church government or something you have experienced in a PCA church, you can reach out through the form on our website at presbyterianpew.org/contact. Towards hope and healing, I'm Lynna Sutherland with Advocacy from the Presbyterian Pew.